Before we begin today's episode, I would like to say thank you to our patrons. So, major thank you to Dustin Miller, Dave Jackson, Ryan Yingling, Poppy the Keaton, Eric Guess, Chris Copleen, Charlie Young, Colby Moyer, Cody Dawson, Nikolai at Night, Chris from A Novel Console, Alex from Low5 Gaming, Backlog Adam, JD, and Adam aka Aries. Thank you to these fine folks for supporting the show. If you want to be like them, you can head to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio, www.patreon.com, that is, /pixelprojectradio, and you can check out all of our offerings. We have a variety of tiers to choose from, and each tier comes with its own bonus content, such as extra episodes, the ability to submit topics and poll ideas, the ability to vote in said polls to decide what episodes we do, and more. It's never expected, but it is always appreciated. So once again, if you wanted to check that out, that's www.patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. Thanks, everyone. Now let's get on to the show. Welcome back to Pixel Project Radio, the video game discussion style podcast where we do deep dives on all of our favorite games and some of yours too. It's me, I am your host, Rick Firestone. This is my podcast. Welcome to it. As I always say, stick around to the end of the show because we are going to tell you where you can find all of our social medias, keep up with the shows, etc., etc. And as always, I do have a special guest here with me today. He is one of the OG special guests on this show. He's been on a lot. He's a friend of the show. He's got a great show himself, one of my personal all-time favorites. We've got Ryan from the List Off podcast. How's it going, man?
It's going really good. Thanks again for having me on, Rick. And yeah, wow, what an intro. Special guest? Like one of your all-time favorites? I know the listeners can't see it, but I assure you I am blushing right now.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I can't really tell either because, you know, webcams.
Right, exactly.
Yes, we'll talk all about List Off towards the end of the show. You've probably heard about them before if you're a longtime fan of the show. And if you haven't, please stick around. It's good stuff. But for today, we are kicking off Spooktober, my totally original idea to do all horror throughout the rest of this month. Can you believe it? Can you believe nobody's thought of this idea? It's insane.
Good for you, though, for being the first, because it seems like it was just sitting right there for somebody to pluck it, you know?
Yeah, the fruit hangeth low around here, and that's how we like it. Okay, let's not go, let's keep those analogies for After Dark. But we are kicking off the spooky month of October with Blair Witch, the game, not the movie. You might be asking yourself, what is Blair Witch? Well, if you don't know, Blair Witch is a survival horror game taking place roughly 2 years after the events of the movie. Players explore the Black Hills forest as Ellis Lynch, a veteran and former cop, as he, along with his police / kind of a service dog named Bullet, help a search party track down a missing 9-year-old named Peter Shannon. The horrors players meet are internal and external, as Ellis copes not only with his PTSD, but with an otherworldly presence as well. What do you think, Ryan? Was that a good intro for the game?
It's better than anything I could have put together, I'll tell you that much. I think it succinctly sums up what you can expect from this title.
And it's an interesting one. This has got me to think a lot about what kind of horror media I enjoy. And I still don't know where I sit with this game because there's a lot to like and there was a lot that really frustrated me. But we can talk about that as we go on. Just a quick summary of the thoughts. I kind of just word vomited out mine a little bit. But in general, like a TLDR, what did you think of this game?
I Really enjoyed it. Spooky games are kind of my jam. I enjoy playing horror games, and just that feeling of uneasiness, and this game has it in spades. It's a lot of not really feeling sure of yourself throughout the entire playthrough. You're not sure of where you're going, if it's the right place. You're not sure if you're ever safe. It's a very solitary game. The music notes hit at the right time. Like, there was so much this game does well that for me, it was like a diamond in the rough. It was a game I didn't play upon initial release, and I had heard kind of a little bit of buzz about it, and not a ton, actually. I'm not even sure if a ton of people had played this game, but I think a ton of people should. It is that good, especially if you enjoy survival horror as a genre.
Now, how many found footage tapes out of 10 are you going to give this bad boy?
Can I give it a half a tape?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. I'm cutting that tape in half. I'm giving it an 8.5.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. That's really strong. Like I said, I don't really know where I sit on this game. There's a lot that I really like about it, and there is a lot that I really didn't. I can't in good faith give it lower than a 5 or a 5 out of 10. Again, using the whole scale for new listeners. I think I'm sitting like at a 6.5 out of 10, maybe a low 7, like a soft 7 out of 10. There's a lot that works so well in this game. You can really tell that the studio behind it knew what they were doing, and as we'll talk about in a moment, it's no wonder why. But there's also just some gameplay stuff that, particularly around the Steam Donkey section, that just really frustrated me. And by the way, Steam Donkey. Can we sit on that for a moment?
You got to get the Steam Donkey going, and it says that. That's the verbiage it uses in the tape. Yeah.
There's somebody out there right now that's like, well, actually a Steam Dog, a donkey right. Traditionally. And it's like, I get it, but
I'm actually a blacksmith, and the Steam Donkey is very important for the process. Yeah.
But what a funny combination of words, Steam Donkey.
It's pretty good. It sounds like a move in bed, if you know what I mean.
It's something that middle schoolers will tell each other about, like at recess, like, right. Oh, have you heard of the Steam Donkey? It's funny. My friend group in high school, all of us, I don't remember why we started using this, but we adopted the insult swamp donkey and would always call each other like, oh, you freaking swamp donkey. And
That's
kids
great,
are
though.
Weird, man.
That's a great insult. One of the best I ever heard. This guy called me a diaper baby once, and I thought that was just golden.
As opposed to a non-diaper baby?
I don't know, but being a grown man and getting called that, it's a special feeling. It's a very special feeling.
It just seems redundant. Why would you say diaper baby? Why not just baby?
That's like the beauty of it all. It's redundant. It's, of course, if you're a baby, you're a diaper baby, but it's like all the more insulting because he's making it a point to call you both. I'm calling you a baby, and I really just need to emphasize you're in diapers, pal. Yeah.
Talk about what a clown you are.
Paint a picture. Great. Yeah.
Well, this has been another Spooktober episode, so we'll catch you next time. Catch you next time, Steam
diaper
Donkeys.
Babies. Yeah.
Before we continue, before we talk about this game, we've got to dive into the community forum. This is one of my favorite parts of every episode. For those that are new to the show, which, by the way, if that's you, welcome. I hope you like what we do here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome all the same. Happy you're all here. And if you don't listen to the show, you'll never hear this anyway, so I could say whatever I want, like Steam Donkey. The community forum is a channel in our Discord where I let everybody know what games we're doing, and I invite them to give their feedback, thoughts, criticisms, etc. For this one in particular, I opened it up not just to the game, but also for the movie, because we're inevitably going to talk a little bit about the movie. I rewatched a little bit of it last night. Spoiler alert for me, it holds up really well. I love that movie.
I agree.
So let's dive into it. Speaking of movies, we've got one of our 2 or 3 movie buffs in the server, Mikey Tabletop, host of the 0-2 Heroes podcast. Have you been on that podcast yet?
I have, yeah. I did an episode on Weapon Lord, which
That's right.
Such a good, underrated game.
And it's an underrated podcast, if you ask me, so go check it out. But here's what he has to say. I had a whole thing typed out, but deleted it because I realized this isn't a film podcast. Well, that's okay, Mikey. So instead, I'll just say, even though I haven't played the game, the movie is such a perfect representation of that time. totally scary movie in the pre-internet age had people really believing it was actually happening. I'm pretty sure it was also the last movie I ever rented from Blockbuster. And then, he goes on to say nice things about our show. Yeah, I was a little too young to be caught up in that hype around the movie, but I remember in retrospect, in the early internet days where, sites very much looked like they were built on GeoCities, I dug into this whole phenomenon, and it's really hard to overstate just how real it felt to everybody back then, because for our younger listeners, like, the internet was not ubiquitous, and this all traveled word of mouth. There was no way to just check. Like, we couldn't Google Snopes.com Blair Witch, It just wasn't a thing. And I mean, you're a little older than I am, Ryan. Do you remember this?
Absolutely, I do. I was very excited for this movie, and there was that air of mystery about it being genuine or not. And if I remember correctly, because I was in like my late teens, I think it was the Sci-Fi Channel, but it may have been a different one. But they had like a fake news broadcast that they had put out either a week or a day before the film released. And it was as though the events of the film actually occurred, right? Like, there were these missing teenagers. They were looking for these missing college students. And on top of that, as you mentioned, they had all the different websites with the, urban legends surrounding the Blair Witch that they built for the film. It was really cool because it was that, for what my memory serves, it was the first time this kind of viral marketing was used. And it was really effective. I was very excited for the movie. I think I may have seen it opening day, if not the first week it came out. And I agree that it holds up, and it scared the crap out of me then. And maybe not so much now, but I've been desensitized at this point.
I think most of us are, especially with found footage. It's got a bit of a bad rap, if you ask me. I think, I don't know if this was the first movie to ever do it, but it certainly was the first one to bring it into the mainstream. And, this one in particular, too, Blair Witch, is a really terrific example of found footage. There's no shortage of bad found footage films these days, and it sucks because it makes the good ones kind of, it hides them under a sort of blanket of mediocrity. And it's a bummer because this movie rocks. It's so good.
Yeah, and I also agree there have been many good found footage films that kind of go unnoticed because it's like, here's the gimmick, found footage, and I think that immediately discards what could be a good movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For those listening, if you want another recommendation for a good one, Lake Mungo. That is a really good found footage movie.
I'll have to watch it.
Speaking of movies, we've got Chris Copleen from the Retro Hangover podcast, another terrific show. Here's what he has to say. I haven't played the game, but I remember when the movie came out and it being somewhat of a phenomenon. A lot of people did think it was real, and as such set off the world of found footage films. I also remember people saying how they thought it was scary, mostly people that were older than myself, but I never got it. Maybe it deserves a rewatch. However, I think Paranormal Activity did it much better. Ooh, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. Like, I enjoyed Paranormal Activity. Oh, I don't know about that.
It's been too long since I've seen it, so I won't comment. I'm not sure that I can endorse that statement, but I thank you all the same for writing in, Chris. Chris is a great member of the Discord community. We love him around here. And finally, somebody that did play the game, we've got Adam from the Revival and Extinction podcast. Here's what he has to say. Blair Witch takes an interesting premise and runs with it and has many good parts, but also many bad. The story and atmosphere starts off strong with the portrayal of Ellis and Bullitt searching for a missing child in the forest, and whilst trying to overcome his own strained relationship with his ex-wife and his past in both the military and police. In the search for the boy, he finds a magic camcorder, I swear to God that's true, and is able to manipulate the world around him, also true. This is a great mechanic and scary shenanigans ensue. The game's failings are in the visuals, however. Whilst it is cool you get to pick Bullitt's color and breed, the game is just too dark overall. I found at least 1 hour of my 6-hour playthrough as wandering aimlessly through the forest, trying to find my next objective, and whilst the ending possibilities are pretty cool, the overall payoff is not worth the effort of slogging through the tedious gameplay. I'm going to save my thoughts on this till when we get to the gameplay section, because I know I can see where he's coming from 100%. Did you want to say anything about this, or do you also want to reserve it?
I mean, I'll reserve most of my feelings on this. I will say I did not have issues with the gameplay, or I didn't at no point was I like lost, right, trying to find my way. But I had played the game when we first talked about getting together to record this, which was a few months ago. So as a refresh, I watched a playthrough, and I learned two things. One is that watching someone else play a video game is extremely frustrating for me. And then the other thing is that it allowed me to see the parts where other people may have struggled that I did not, right? Like they may have found these to be issues when to me, it just didn't affect my gameplay. Like throughout my playthrough, I never ran into being lost, but the person I was watching did. And I could definitely see where Adam's coming from and why he feels that way.
Yeah, I think this is a decent game to try and watch. If you're not sure if you're somebody that can watch gameplays, like Let's Plays, this is a good one to try if you like horror versus like, I don't know, like a Persona or something like that. But I'm with you. I generally am not big on watching Let's Plays unless I'm like taking notes for the show. And we can maybe talk. That's interesting that you didn't get lost at all. I definitely did. And we can maybe get into that more with the visuals and the...
I want to save my thoughts for later because I definitely have thoughts about this, and I think it's one of the strengths of the game, but that's based off of my experience.
Well, let's not hold up the conversation. Let's get through some facts and figures so we can talk about that kind of thing. And by the way, thank you, Discord members, for writing in to the community forum. Always love it, and if you want to join in the fun, stick around to the end. You can find out how to do so. This game, Blair Witch, was released on August 30th of 2019 for Xbone, that's Xbox One and Windows, and then in December for the PS4. It came out on Switch, and VR the following June of 2020. This was developed by Bloober Team, and if you are not familiar with them, you might be familiar with some of their games, the most famous of which are probably the Layers of Fear games, Layers of Fear 1 and 2. Ryan, you said that they also did a game called Medium?
The Medium? Yeah. It introduced a really neat puzzle mechanic where you could switch between two worlds, kind of the spirit world and the main world, at any point during gameplay, and you would use that to solve puzzles. That
is very cool. And they also are involved in the upcoming Silent Hill 2 remake, which is extremely exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that. This game was published by Lionsgate Games. It was directed, and I'm just going to get this out of the way. There are a lot of consonants in these names. I am going to do my best. It was directed by Mateusz Lenhart, written by Barbara Kchuik. I'm not sure about that one. Also written by Marcin Welnicki and Andrzej Madrak. I'm really sorry. Composed by... This is the toughest one for me.
Wow.
Arkadiusz Rakowski?
Yeah.
Arkadiusz.
Oh, man. This is so bad.
This is there's a running gag on Stuff You Should Know that they're bad at pronunciations, and like staring at these and staring at my microphone, I can now like I feel it, man. I feel like my chair is getting hot.
Well, to be fair, like I'm looking at these names, and you'd have to have some familiarity with like Eastern European language to be able to pronounce these, right? Like these are not easy names to pronounce. I don't envy your position.
I am only 25% Czechoslovakian. I can't handle the full words. Lionsgate actually approached Bloober Team about this. They were interested in their work because of Layers of Fear, and they wanted a work to be done with the Blair Witch IP. So they said, hey, Bloobergate, let's make a Blair Witch game. We're Lionsgate Games. And Bloober Team said, that sounds great. We're Bloober Team. Let's do it. The full immersion was sort of the core impetus behind this game. They really wanted to create a game where the player felt like they were in the shoes of Ellis. That was the idea. The environment was to be semi-open world. Exploration was a huge part of this deal. And we'll talk in a moment whether or not we feel like they succeeded. The team was given full rights, Bloober Team was, that is, to work within the universe of Blair Witch, and they were also given the go-ahead to create a wholly unique story. So this takes place 2 years after the original events of the movie, and it's a totally unique story. The focus being, again, on immersion and exploration, but also psychological horror that Bloober Team became known for from Layers of Fear and some of their other games. One of the writers, Barbara Kachuik, again, not sure, they put it like this. Quote, "For us, open spaces are not only a challenge, but also an opportunity. A forest setting gives you completely new tools to play with. Players can never be sure what lurks in the darkness." End quote. All right. I was not sure whether I wanted to save this till mechanics or visuals or what, but let's just talk about it now.
Okay.
Their whole idea behind this was immersion and exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. How do you feel like they did on that front?
So I will say to me, they nailed the immersion. I definitely think the first person perspective helped. I actually am considering and have considered buying this game again to play on PSVR 2. I think it would be an incredible experience to play it that way. Talk about immersion, right? As for the exploration, so I alluded to the fact that I think the feeling of being lost but never truly being lost is something this game excels at. You always have your dog, Bullet, that can help you find the next goal or next, checkpoint, right? To keep moving throughout the game. Ultimately, the game does feel linear to me, but I can't think of many games that nail the feeling of like, am I doing this right? Am I going the right way? When in actuality, you almost always are. And it's such an unnerving feeling, and it adds to that feeling of isolation, and it adds to that creepiness, that overall uneasiness of the game. And I think it goes hand in hand with what Barbara Kachuik said. If they were going for the feeling of never being sure what lurks in the darkness, I think they absolutely nailed that as a whole. Like, this game, you're just uneasy the whole time. You're always like, should I be here? Is this the right place I should be? And it almost always ended up that it was for me. But it always just feels like you're stumbling through the darkness in the woods. And that's, to me, that's exactly what I wanted from this game.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, pardon my French, but if you're going to play this in VR, you've got balls of steel, my friend, because I don't think I could do it.
That's I love so spooky scary. Games in VR, dude. I love it. They so are
scary.
Extremely scary, yes.
But more to what you were saying, I generally agree with you. I think they did the immersion really, really well. Stupendously well, to be honest with you. There's more to elaborate on that when we get to things like mechanics and sound especially. But for now, I'll leave it at that. I don't feel like it was quite as straightforward. That wasn't my experience. I did get lost quite a bit. Bullet is useful in helping you sniff out where to go. But a lot of the times, he just doesn't pick up on anything. And, he'll sniff around and Ellis will say, "Nothing, huh?" And then that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there's a point early on in the game where Ellis blacks out, and then it's nighttime in the woods. Before that, I was a little more turned around than afterwards. Once that blackout happens, things start to pick up, and I wasn't quite as frustrated with the exploration for the most part. But before that, I don't know what happened. I got completely turned around. I didn't know where to go. And I was thinking, because I'm looking at the next part of my notes here, this game was inspired by games like Firewatch, Alan Wake, and Outlast. I almost said Outcast.
Hey, yeah.
And movies like Wreck and Paranormal Activity that Chris Coplien is so fond of. In Firewatch, this is interesting because it is a walking sim. Exploration is a big part of it. You're in the woods, but they give you a map. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not a map like a JRPG where you can see the outline of everything and see the corridors. It is like a straight up map like you would get in real life. And you don't have a little blinking "you are here" blip. And it really added to the exploration to me. And I think this game could have benefited from that. I really do. In this game, you don't get a map at all. You don't get anything like that. You can occasionally, whenever you're doing certain puzzle areas, you'll see like a map of the area, like with the aforementioned steam donkeys. But in general, you don't have a map of the woods. And I almost wish they would have given you like a rudimentary one, like just a general outline of, like topography and things like that. Do you think that would have worked, or do you think it would have been deleterious to this?
I mean, I definitely think it worked in Firewatch. I really enjoyed that game. I think that map was excellent because it always took you at least a few seconds of looking at it to recognize where you were, which, cardinal direction you were facing and where to move from there. And
in this game, they actively tell you, like, you're going to want to keep moving because when you stand still, that's when bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I feel like having a map, I mean, that could have really added some scares.
That's true. I think it adds to the feeling of uneasiness to not have the map, though. I do think this was intentional. I think a point that they wanted to get across is like, you're out here by yourself. You don't really know where you're going. You're searching for someone who's missing. And like, I mean, I recognize I probably feel this way because of my experience and because I never really struggled with being lost. But for me, I don't know if the game would have benefited from having a physical map. They do things later in the game that help you find the way. Not to give too much away, but you kind of have tools within your camera to see what the path is later in the game. And there are other waypoints where they tell you pretty much exactly where to go. So it's something that kind of cleans up as it goes along. But yeah, I think it's intentional, like especially in that intro part in the beginning of the game. I think it was an intentional decision. I don't know if it hurt.
Oh, it was definitely intentional. Whether you liked it or not, this was done. This was not just a result of like poor planning. Mm-hmm. Like they wanted you to feel lost in these woods. And I mean, look, I'm not saying that the lack of a map was like a huge con for me. I'm just personally saying I don't think the game would have suffered from having one. But at the same time, somebody that is more into these sort of horror games like you are, compared to me anyway, I can see the argument of not having one because it adds to that element of feeling like you're turned around, you're not sure what's going on, you don't know where to go. And to be quite frank, there are some tricks the witch plays on you when you're walking around to disorient you, and a map would kind of cheapen those a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Speaking of the witch's trickery and some of the comments from Adam from the community forum, let's move into visuals. Before we do, the reviews on this game generally were pretty mixed, leaning towards favorable but mixed. A lot of 5 out of 10s, 7 out of 10s, 1 or 2 8 out of 10s that I could find. Generally, it was, some of the gameplay elements were criticized, like the puzzles and the general like direction of wandering in the woods. The atmosphere was almost universally praised from what I could see. Things like that. Not too far off from what we're talking about here. So let's talk about those visuals. I thought this game looked really good.
Yes, save for the character models. It has a little bit of jank to like their movement and animation.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But as far as the rendering of the forest itself, it was awesome. Like, you really feel like you're in a forest. And they do those kind of PTSD flashbacks where they mix in parts of his flashback into the woods, and it's so surreal and so well done. I agree with you. I think the visuals are definitely good outside of those character models.
Yeah, now that you're talking about the character models, I am remembering some weirdness. Even with Bullet the dog, there was some weirdness with his fur. And I know fur and hair, those are particularly difficult to render compared to things like landscapes and geometry. So it's hard to like criticize it too hard, especially because it doesn't look like objectively bad or anything.
Right.
But there was some weirdness. And speaking of weirdness, like we were both just mentioning, there are a lot of reports of bugs in this game. Did you experience any of those?
No, and I was thinking when you were going over the reviews and saying there were a lot of 5 out of 10s, I believe this game launched with some problems, with some buggy problems. And by the time I played it, those must have been cleaned up because I ran into 0 bugs, like no bugs whatsoever, no pop in, which as I was playing it, I remember having this thought like, I cannot believe that the forest is this dense and there's no pop in or fog or like lack of everything looks natural as far as the detail that is lost with distance. Like that's why I thought the visuals were so impressive. But I do remember hearing it was a little bit buggy upon release. So
you also played this on PS5, right?
I did.
Yeah. I didn't experience a single bug throughout this. There was one part where I thought I might have been. I'll talk about that in the mechanics, but I'm not sure that it was a bug. But in some of the older forum posts and stuff online, you could see people talking about like actual game-breaking bugs. And that's just not something that I've experienced. Maybe, like you said, maybe like things were just patched and those like release bugs and release weirdness, little weirdsies have been taken care of and eradicated. I think this was a pretty functional experience.
Wow, such high praise. This experience was completely functional.
It generally worked as intended. As far as visuals and level design goes, you are going to be in the woods in the dark for a lot of this. The beginning, you're in the woods, sort of like approaching twilight, approaching dusk. There's some light. But after that, it is nighttime for the rest of the time. And that's important because there are going to be some monsters roaming around. And this is where it starts to, well, not where it starts, but this is different from the original movie. One of the things that made the original movie so scary is, well, partly because it was found footage done extremely well, but we never got to see the monsters. Not really. I mean, they were implied heavily, hinted at. Am I misremembering that?
No, we never saw a monster. Actually, like there are some really, really cool breakdowns of that movie and theories behind it of like who is responsible and what they're doing that I would recommend. I don't want to give too much away, but it does involve the people that set out into the woods and what their motivations are. Maybe I'll share a link with you, Rick, on that.
Yeah, please do. If you share it with me, I'll put it into the show notes.
Cool.
In this one, though, it's not like in Amnesia where like you can see the monster and it will walk up to you and stand in front of you as it kills you. It's not quite like that. These monsters are incredibly fast. They immediately run as soon as you see them. You're never really getting a full look at them. I mean, you see them head to toe, but it doesn't give you enough time to process in your brain to make out the features, which in my opinion, makes it scarier than something like Amnesia. Not to say that Amnesia is not scary. That's one of the scariest games that I've ever played. But never being able to quite get a good look at these creatures freaks me out. And I did say creatures. There are a lot of them. Let's try to describe them. They're like, they're humanoid.
They're like Groot, basically. Like an evil Groot. That's at least what I gathered. They seem almost twig-like, right? Like fast, agile. They blend in with the forest. And yeah, I mean, I really didn't let one get close enough to get a good look, like you said, because they're weak to your flashlight, right? Like that's kind of how you fend them off. And, yeah, every time the music changes and it swells and you're in for it. And you hear that sound effect that occurs when your flashlight, kind of triggers one of them. It's like that really, it's almost like a gunshot, right?
Yeah. You when you shine your flashlight on one of them, your controller will vibrate, and the flashlight in an instant kind of gets brighter, and then you get like a bang, like a flash, and the monster dissipates. What's really cool is if you're not shining the light directly on it, you can still see them darting about in the shadows, and they're fast, cool. Man. They are so fast. It's creepy. It's really good. It's really good. I really liked it. You're never going to see these monsters in the light because they don't like that. So whenever you're in areas that have overhead lights, like some areas of the woods do for, steam donkey purposes, you're not going to see them in those lighted areas. So you're generally safe there.
And there are different types of monsters as well. Like you have the like rolling leaf monster, right? That you never really get to see. And
I forgot that was considered a monster.
I mean, I would think there's something there, right? It knocks into your train cart, and that was a pretty tense scene. It lets you think you're like safe in this train cart until you're not, and then you can't do anything about it because you're like surrounded by these monsters. And then there were the ones that you had to sneak by, which I thought I took as being different from the other ones. But maybe it was the same creature. It was just the fog rendered them like less aggressive, and you kind of had to be silent as you went by them.
Yeah, potentially. Either way, though, whenever you're dealing with these monsters, you're never going to be able to look at them and draw them. For example, they're not corporeal like some of the monsters in Resident Evil, for example. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge boon to the atmosphere of this game.
Yeah.
In addition to the forest, I mean, there are some other areas around here. You'll find a bunker, which plays into one of the secret endings. You'll find various shacks and sheds to explore, to find items. There are collectibles all throughout. Pictures, just like in the Blair Witch movie, of victims like standing in the corner. You can find little twig creations that were also in the movie. The little carved dolls, you can find those laying about. There's a lot of that. In addition to that, there's also the PTSD sequences that you alluded to, Ryan. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about those real quick. Ellis is a character with a really troubled past, and it's never explicitly talked about. In fact, that's one area in this game, like, I kind of wish almost it was a little bit longer and we could have got more character development from Ellis just to really hammer some of these points home. Because, like, I was reading plot synopses preparing for this episode, and I was like, oh yeah, like, I guess I did know that, but I don't remember how I came to know that. Like, one of those sorts of things, you know? That's a very, very minor nitpick. I'm not even calling that a con. I'm just putting it out there. But Ellis is a very troubled individual. He had a rough past, and this kind of culminated in the military. He was involved in combat. He took lives out of necessity, and then by accident at least once. Then he had some trauma in the police unit as well. That's how he came to get Bullet, actually. The police academy, his boss, gave him this dog. And it's a really cute moment whenever he gives him Bullet. He says something to the effect of like, what does he say? He's talking to Bullet. He's like, oh, he's been through a lot just like you, huh, buddy?
Yeah.
Like to the dog. It's a really nice moment. Bullet is a really good companion to you. I'm generally not a big fan of dogs in video games. I'm not gonna lie, but Bullet is cool.
Bullet is cool.
But getting back to these PTSD moments, they are very intense.
Extremely.
Do you think, I am not somebody that is well versed in what PTSD is, to be quite frank. I'm not implying that you are, but do you think this game succeeds in portraying that?
Gosh, I mean, I feel like I almost don't want to speak on this because, I don't suffer from PTSD and haven't had experience with it myself. I'm sure it's something your thoughts go back to, right? Like, that's a huge part of it, your thoughts going back to these actions. And I think the game portrayed that well. Like, it seemed his past seemed inescapable, and it was coming back into his memory to cause anxiety, to make him physically unable to move and breathe even at some points. And so I think if they were trying to convey the weight of some serious PTSD, I think it did a good enough job of that. I'm not sure if, visually the way they portrayed it is the way somebody experiences it.
I think that's a good stance for us to take is, we're not going to speak on this as if we know what we're talking about. So I'm going to take the same route as you here. The way that they're presented in the game, though, just factually, is that they come about as basically hallucinations. It's as if he's reliving these moments over and over again, going through these combat-laden cities, going through the ruins of these destroyed houses, seeing his soldier comrades get shot or do the shooting. It's very visceral and very real. It's very loud. There are lots of bangs and gunfire and helicopters, and it's incredibly intense. He's breaking down throughout most of this game with these PTSD troubles. And what I love about this is that it adds to this idea that Ellis never knows what is real and what is not in this game.
Yeah,
he's going through the forest. Yeah, we never know either. He's going through this forest. I mean, on one level, he's a human being, and human beings get scared. It's a normal, reaction, particularly to being in the dark, right? You don't know if you're alone or if something else is with you. You don't know.
Yeah.
The next level is the PTSD, right? He has vivid hallucinations, and oftentimes too, we can, we might just hear footsteps, or like he might remember some of the combats, and we don't see it, but we hear it. So that's the second level, is the PTSD. The third level is the witch herself, who is actively manipulating the environment around Ellis to break his mental state. Sometimes that manifests in, like, if you're walking through a thing of weeds, not weeds. If you're walking through the brush,
underbrush, yeah.
Yeah, you get turned around, like actually turned around. She manipulates the forest around you, which is cool. Oftentimes it's like the monsters, the leaves like blowing around, coming at you.
But then you also get like sand that emerges from the forest, and parts of buildings that emerge from the forest. And
the witch will actively create these PTSD hallucinations. So they're no longer manifestations of his PTSD; they are from the witch. So at every turn, Ellis's mental fortitude is being tested and squeezed, because he doesn't know what is a result of his condition, what is from the witch, what is just from being a human and being afraid. He never knows. And that makes this game really, really powerful, and really, it really lends to an atmosphere of fear, I think. I think they did extremely well in this area.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it was everything you said. It was well said. I mean, some of the wildest sequences in this game are when he's going through that.
There's the first scene that the witch summons some of the PTSD imagery, or maybe it's not the first one, but it's definitely the most intense, where, you're in the forest definitively, but like bullets are raining down from helicopters you can't see, but you can hear. You can't see the bullets either, but you can see the leaves and the soil flying, and things are on fire just out of nowhere. These buildings that come up out of nowhere are just on fire. It is that was a really intense part of the game, and I really enjoyed it at that point.
Yeah, it transforms the whole environment changes around you.
This can also happen too. There is a mild, what do you call it, mechanic of like sanity in this game. It's not quite like Amnesia, but if you go away from Bullet, Bullet will generally follow you unless Bullet is, keyed into something and wants to take you there. Bullet will generally follow you, but if you tell Bullet to stay and you walk away, the farther you get away from Bullet and the longer you're away from him, the more Ellis starts to kind of, his vision gets very tunneled. He starts to breathe heavier. He starts to get that sort of photograph vision where you look left and right, and instead of just seeing, vision, you see like boop, 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 boop kind of deal.
Yeah.
That's something that happens like to everybody, I think, and it's just it's one of the phenomenons of the human brain that every time I experience it, I'm like, this is so weird.
Yeah, it's like you're like you said, the tunnel vision. It's like when you get up too fast, right, and you're dehydrated. It's like
that happened to me a lot whenever I was in undergrad.
Party animal. It does such a good job of showing that though, and it's something we all are familiar with, right? Like that feeling.
I think the game only forces you into that situation once, like very early on, just to show you what happens if you're away from Bullet for too long. And what happens is Ellis kind of passes out, like he cannot get a grip. He just kind of kneels down. He blacks out, and then he comes to. I think you're only forced into it once. I mean, you're knocked out more than once in the game, but I think because of being away from Bullet, I think that's only one time, I think.
Bullet is a good boy.
Bullet is a good boy. Definitively a good boy. While we're on the topic of like atmosphere and this idea of immersion, let's talk about music and sound. Music we could talk about pretty quickly. I don't really remember any music from this game. And that's not, I'll add on to this in a minute. That's not a bad thing, but I don't remember a single bit of music from this.
Wow, interesting. It doesn't have much music. It's more like a tone they play. I really like the pullback of the forest in the title screen in the beginning, and they play it there. And then you hear it at certain points throughout the game, like whenever you find a journal log or there's like, some revelation about what's going on. And it's really just this tone of a string instrument. I don't know if it's a violin, but it is. God, I could try to replicate it with my voice if you'd like, but I'm sure nobody would. But it's really just like a few notes, 3 or 4 notes, and it's a very high-pitched like string instrument, and it's kind of discordant notes too. But it's really cool. I liked it, and I think the times when it comes in are very fitting, and it's well used. But I don't really recall music outside of that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Fitting and well used are exactly how I would describe it. It's all very additive. The music does not take a front seat. It is not trying to, I recently started playing Resident Evil 7, and it's kind of funny. There's like an opening cutscene that you can get if you, whenever you start up the game after the first time, and it's like this weird rendition of Go Tell Aunt Rhody. And like this game doesn't do anything like showy like that. The music always serves a point. It's never to show off the composer or be like, oh, listen, this is a leitmotif. This represents the witch. It's not like that. It just punctuates, like you said, any of the experiences that you're seeing. And it works in tandem with the sound design, which I think is extremely good in this game.
Yes.
This is one of the only games where, like, I feel like playing most games, even games with a great soundtrack, you can play it with speakers and it's fine. Like, you're not losing anything. But this game, like, if you use speakers instead of headphones, I think that is a deleterious to the experience. I don't know why I've used that word so many times.
I don't know, but like, man, good for you.
Headphones are a complete boon to this game. It changes the experience and it makes the immersion that much more intense. I strongly recommend anybody play this game with headphones and in the dark if you can.
Yeah, directional audio definitely helps because there is a lot of that, a lot of like rustling in the bushes to your right, or when you hear those bullets whizzing by, you hear them on a specific side of your head.
Yes, I think they refer to that in the beginning of the game, like in the before the game starts, as binaural audio.
Yeah.
That directional audio.
It's much better than saying, I hear it on one side of my head. I have a way with words.
It gets the point across all the same. That's what matters, bud. But yes, it's like you will hear bullet rustling around to your left. You will hear the leaf monsters rustling behind you. You will hear in front of you the lights to an overhead lamp just shut off. Direction is very important here. And that's going to be important too when the monsters start coming. You got to know where they are. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. But yeah, I thought the sound design in this game was extremely well done. Voice acting, though, I'm not so sure. I didn't think the voice acting was all too great.
Yeah, no, it's not a strong point for sure. I agree with you. There's a lot of monologue happening, but the acting would need to be strong, right, to carry something like that. And it's almost like when you watch a horror film, there's a tier to those, right? You might call it like B tier, let's say. And I would put the voice acting at that B tier for movies, like that kind of level.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not, like, none of it is bad, but it did kind of stand out to me, especially towards the beginning. It just does not feel natural. And they credit the voice actor for Ellis, like, with an actual Wikipedia page. His name's Joseph May. And I looked him up. I'm not really familiar with much of what he's done. He played somebody in The Crew 2. He was in Lego City Undercover. He played Jost and Saravad in Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't remember who they are at all.
I don't either.
Oh, and look here. It says he was in the US dub of Thomas the Tank and Friends. That's very cool.
That is cool.
So he knows what he's doing. But either way, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about anybody's performance in this. Yeah, but it's not detractive. Like, I just want to make that clear. It is not, like, actively making the experience worse, because there's not a ton of voice acting.
This is maybe the time, like, it took me out a few times. You know, it wasn't constant.
Okay.
Like, there were times it was good, but there were a few times where, like, he would say something and that's, you know, supposed to have this emotional weight behind it, and it would just come across as, like, someone acting like they're supposed to have emotional weight, you know?
Yeah. I think we all know what that sounds like, even if we can't really describe it. You hear it and you know. Mm-hmm. It's to paraphrase that famous Supreme Court hearing. But yeah, the music sound very, very good. Very, very good. It really adds to the immersion that is also very, very good. So far, this game sounds like a smash hit, at least to me. So let's move on and talk mechanics for a moment. Okay, so the mechanics of this game. I didn't mean to leave off on that cliffhanger. I don't think the mechanics are, like, actively bad. For me, the frustrations came from some of the mechanics and the exploration getting me lost more than a few times. So the mechanics. First off, you are first-person POV, but it's that bobblehead kind of POV. And boy, oh boy, do I hate that. Thankfully, it doesn't bobble when you walk, but, like, in any kind of, like, computer controlled scene where Ellis has to, like, jump down, crawl, you're getting that bobblehead effect, and it makes me nauseated.
Yeah, and cutscenes too. I mean, they're all told from that first person perspective, which I think also helps with immersion. That's something I didn't think about. Is there's not a cutscene outside of first person.
No, there's not. There's, as far as I can remember, there is one scene where you get to actually see Ellis at the very end, if you get one of the endings. Right.
But yeah, like, as you mentioned, the only time it really bothered me was those longer, like, extended cutscenes. The individual movements of crouching and things like that wasn't terrible for me.
No, it's very steady in those. Like, when you're walking, when you're running, when you're crouching, gameplay is steady, which is good. That is very good. I wonder how they would handle that in VR. Do you think it would still be kind of bobblehead-like?
I think it would move with you. I mean, from most games that I've played that are either patched for VR or made for VR, it's your head movement. So you wouldn't get that kind of nausea unless you do from movement. I tend to do better with teleportation, they call it, in VR games, because I get really messed up when you're moving forward in the game, but you're not physically moving.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like my brain's being dragged down a tunnel, you know?
It's like a more extreme version of reading in the car, right?
Yeah.
You know, your body is saying, I am moving or I'm not moving, and your brain is saying the opposite. It's like, meltdown.
Correct. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, tell me about it if you ever play this in VR. I'm very interested in this.
I will, for sure.
Exploration is the main mechanic in this game. I mean, it's kind of part of the immersion, but it is the main mechanic. You're walking, you're running, you're crouching. You get to interact with the environment sometimes. You get to pick up collectibles, these photos, the stick twigs, things like that. It's pretty basic stuff. Nothing crazy here. But there are some other mechanics that make this interesting. First off, our light sources function as mechanics. You've got a flashlight and you've got a camera. Now, in this game, the flashlights, and the game does tell you this, the flashlights will kill the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
You shine your light on them, they dissipate, and that particular monster, at least for now, is gone. So we never really know how many there are truly. Your camera can do the same thing. Your camera has like a weaker light on it, but it's also got night vision. This is important because one, it makes everything darker. You're in more darkness without a flashlight if you're using the camera, which makes things spookier. It's scary. The camera does not kill the monsters.
Right.
This is important if you want to get all of the endings.
Oh, interesting.
I think, unless I read that wrong.
We'll have more on that later, I guess. No, you don't. You probably read it correctly. I did not get all of the endings, so.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Neither did I. I watched them on YouTube, but I did not get all of them. There's another mechanic here. You've got a camera, as I mentioned, but there are also tapes that you find. This is, I wasn't sure how to feel about this at first. So the camera can play these tapes that you find. They're always red. Well, not all of them are red, but the ones that we're going to talk about right now are marked red. And they are generally from this, at the time, unknown person who captured Peter, the 9-year-old kid, who also captured Todd. He is a lumber worker, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bad guy, and they're sort of from his point of view. The thing about these tapes is that they can manipulate the environment. So one of the early examples, I don't think it's the first. Oh, no, I think this is the first one. The POV person is walking behind 9-year-old Peter, and one of them drops a ball, and the other one picks it up. I don't remember which is which. Now, if you rewind the tape and pause it when the ball is on the ground and you turn and look, the ball will be on the ground. Mm-hmm. You can alter reality with these tapes. You can do it to open doors. You can do it to, I think at one point you do it to change your whole environment. You can do it to find shovels, things like that. What did you think about this?
Okay, so it lends to the idea of not knowing what's real or not. Does it fit if this game, I mean, it's hard to say. I love the mechanic of it. I'll say that much. I love, and you could actually see the things moving in the background, by the way. Like as you play the tape, there's a falling tree, right? That you have to get to a point where it's still standing in the video to go past it. And if you play that part of the tape and you're near the tree, you will actually see it falling as the tape plays, which I think is really cool that it's happening in real time in the environments as you're watching them on the tape. Same with like the stone that falls over, right? I like it as a puzzle mechanic. I think it's one that is easy to grasp as soon as you see it, and it does a good job of tutorializing how it works. And I don't know if it's always implemented in the best way, like with the tapes and when you're trying to pause it and how much of a window they give you and things like that. Like there are some where it's a little frustrating because you can't like move forward or backward in slow motion, and you have to get like a 1 second window on the tape, and it doesn't take more than a handful of tries, but the fact that it takes a handful of tries, it really shouldn't. You know exactly what window you're aiming for. It's just you have to land in that exact spot.
You can imagine Ellis just standing there, like just continually missing it and just being like, oh, God damn it. And then the witch who's manipulating the environment, she's like, what the fuck are you doing? Come on, man.
Dude, like you should get this by now. Yeah, no, I do like the mechanic, though. I love interesting puzzle mechanics, and I think this is a very unique one that I don't think I've ever seen outside of this game.
It is interesting. I know I've seen stuff like it before, but I think it works for the most part. None of the puzzles are like they're not overly complex or complicated. It's more so just to break up, I think, the game from being a strict walking simulator. It's just giving you a little something extra to do. The only puzzle section that was really frustrating to me was the Steam Donkey section, because you've got, those 3 camps in a sort of triangle, and you have to go back and forth to, hunt for items to fix the broken Steam Donkey. You got to go to the good Steam Donkey, take that. Got to go to the other good Steam Donkey. Turns out that one's a bit more of a mess. You have to hunt a little bit. It's just a lot of backtracking. That was frustrating.
Yeah, this was a huge middle chunk of the game, and it's really like this whole thing I would say is one puzzle.
And it's like one solid play session too.
For sure. It's like an hour plus long puzzle just because of the distance in between these places and the different things you have to acquire to put the swamp donkey together and everything. It's the
steam donkey.
I know, man. That was intentional. But yeah, I think this could have been cleaned up and streamlined. I don't know if they were trying to pad the playtime because it's not a very long game. So maybe, there were concerns about whether or not people would compare the value to the playtime. So, I mean, who knows? But I do think this could have been cleaned up and shortened a little bit. That section in particular, it did bother me.
What was your playtime? Do you know offhand?
I think it was like 5 hours.
5?
Yeah, like 5.5 maybe.
Wow, I was at like 8.
Really?
I think maybe, I wonder, some of it might have been just me keeping the game on pause, like while it was up.
Maybe.
But I did explore like as much as I could. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I wish I had my PlayStation 5 here. I would just check my playtime because I don't think I played it outside of my one playthrough. So,
but listeners, it is under 10 hours if you're curious.
Yeah.
But yeah, the tapes, I think they're cool. They work. I have this later in the notes, but I'll just talk about it now. It does it brings up this idea of suspending disbelief, right? And that's part of what makes the movie such a masterpiece, in my opinion, is that it doesn't overextend the indulgence of asking us to suspend our disbelief, right? The disbelief is there's a witch in the woods.
Right.
That's really it. This one here, there is an angle that you can take with the game that I've seen some folks take on Reddit, in the forums, etc. When they're like just anything that people ask, like why does this take so long? Why is Bullet sending me in circles? Why does this happen? And it's always just, oh, it's the witch. The witch is doing it. The witch, and it's like that's really lame to me.
Yeah.
But if you're not using that excuse, then this game is asking us to suspend our disbelief in that there is a witch. Okay, that's fine. That's the movie.
Yeah.
There's also some time cycling, like BioShock Infinite style,
right?
Where mild spoilers. There's like it's you, but it's not you, and there's time jumping. You're literally manipulating reality.
Turn on the
lights.
There's
a lot. Yeah,
that will like turn on the lights moment, right? That's you, like
right.
Talking to you. Yeah.
This game is asking you to suspend your disbelief a lot more than the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a matter of taste. For me, I go back and forth. I'm still not even sure how I feel about it. It is asking you to go along for the ride more than the original. And there is something about that original where, it is much closer to reality that I personally like more in horror. I like horror that is rooted in reality, I think, more than like supernatural slashers, for example. Not that I don't like those. Like I love Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and Jason.
Right.
They're great. But like when horror feels real, like it could happen to me if I walked into the woods like a mile down the road, that's what I like. And like I don't think I'm going to walk into the woods and find a tape recorder that can, transport me to a different shed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the original film excelled at that feeling grounded. This does not feel that grounded. I like what they do, though. I like that they're doing interesting things with the IP and the idea, and I do like when they introduce those kind of time loop mechanics and things like that. It's interesting, but it's different. It is very different from what you get in that first Blair Witch movie.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to come down to taste. And I mean, I don't think it's bad. I really don't. It's just, I prefer it one way. You might prefer it another way. The listeners might prefer it a third way,
Did you ever watch the Blair Witch sequel? Not the one that came out like a year or two later. The one that came out like, I want to say like 3 years ago.
I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you might like it. You should watch it. It's not as good as the original. I'll say that. Not as good as the original, but it's sure. I had a good time with it.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thanks for the rec. I didn't know that existed. We've got one more major mechanic to talk about. But before we get there are some like mechanics within your inventory You can call the station on your walkie-talkie. You can call your ex-wife, Jess. You can look at old texts. You can play Snake on your phone and like
That's right.
Galaga. I think you can get an achievement for that. That's what one of our Discord regulars, Poppy the Keaton, that's what he said. If you can just be playing Snake out in this haunted forest. That's hilarious to me.
That is pretty funny.
You can like just look at all of the collectibles you found. You can give Bullet treats, things like that. You know, those are kind of mechanics. But our last major mechanic, speaking of, is Bullet himself, because he has a bunch of things that he can do, and he is integral to playing this game. You have a command wheel with Bullet where you can tell him to search for things. That's where, like, if you're a little lost, he might be able to point you in the right direction. This does not always work. Have to be clear on that, but it does sometimes. You can tell him to stay put, or stay close to you, depending on what you're trying to do. And you can pet or reprimand him. You can do either of those. And believe it or not, that's actually important to the endings.
It is. I will say his search, I think, functions when there are items in the environment around you. Like, I don't think it's necessarily to find the next story beat or checkpoint. I may have said that earlier. I was misremembering it. Now it's coming back to me, and I think he just finds like useful items in the environment around you.
Useful items, or like he might find like a pack of cigarettes, and Ellis will see it and be like, oh, these damn kids, or like, he might find a photograph or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bullet's function in this game, I mean, it's kind of twofold. He is a sort of service dog. I don't think he's like, is he ever classified explicitly as a service dog, or is it just implied?
It's heavily implied.
Yeah. Yeah, so like if you're too far away from Bullet, you're going to be in trouble, like we talked about earlier. Bullet can also clue you into dangerous enemies nearby. So like, if there's an enemy coming to get you and you have to shine your flashlight on them, Bullet will face that direction and growl. That's the only time Bullet will growl in gameplay, is when something dangerous is coming. So that's good. And then, did I say 2? I meant to say 3. The third thing that Bullet can do, he generally guides you. You'll hit points where Bullet will just like pick up a scent and take off, because that's Bullet's function throughout this, is he is picking up the scent of Peter, the missing boy, and we're trying to find him. That's the whole reason Ellis is here with Bullet, is to find this boy. So Bullet will occasionally pick up on scents and take off in a direction, and you've got to follow him. Bullet will, like, you can call Bullet back if he gets too far away. If he gets too far away, he might just stop and wait for you. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. It's kind of weird, but you can always call him back. But he's really important, because a lot of this game is following him. And I've seen that as a criticism. Like, people will say like, oh, this is just follow the dog simulator.
Oh,
which I think is a little bit reductive, if you ask me.
I agree. I never felt that way. I was always kind of thankful that the dog knew where to go when he did. And he doesn't all the time, as you said. Like, you're not always following the dog. Like, yeah, you as a player are following where you know the next story beat to go, and the dog is coming with you at times.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't think that this was a follow the dog simulator at all. Especially without a map. I was thankful to have something telling me where to go, to be honest. I mentioned earlier that I thought that I might have had a bug, and it came at a time where I don't remember if it was nighttime or if it was like dusk or what, but Bullet was like leading me in circles for like a full 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was like, I thought maybe I'm missing something in the trees. At some point, I actually was missing something and wandering too much. And I got a text from an unknown number that said, look in the trees. And that like gave me I found something by doing that.
Oh, interesting.
That was kind of funny. Yeah. But yeah, Bullet was leading me in circles. It was like, and not like little circles. It was just like a big circular path. I kept going through the same thing. So I looked it up, because I was like, this is 15 minutes. This has been a bit.
Right.
And some other folks online had said the same thing. They're like, is this a bug? And then, people were like, no, that's
it's
the
a witch.
She's doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
And like, Like, if I hadn't been hit with that response so many times reading these threads, I wouldn't have rolled my eyes as hard. But, like, you can't just say that at every turn.
Genius developers, though, dude. Make your game about a witch, and everybody will just be like, oh, this bug. Oh, it's just a witch messing with you, dude. Relax.
Yeah. I did eventually find where I needed to go, but, like, that was mildly frustrating. If that was the intent of the developers to, like, lead you in circles for that long, I think you could have maybe got that feeling a little better, easier on the player.
Maybe but shorter time wandering.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
circles.
Seriously, it was frustrating. I stopped playing the game as soon as I could save after that.
I will say though, it's kind of cool that you get a text from an unknown number telling you what to do after a while. I had no idea there were solutions like that embedded into the game.
That was cool, and to be fair, that wasn't like a key item. It ended up being like another photograph. But I think that photograph kind of put me on the path to where I needed to go in the game. So I'm not sure if it was just, random or if it was the developers like putting that in there as a way to help people that are genuinely lost, which I was at that time. But it was cool. It was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was really neat. We mentioned the pet and the reprimand command. You might think that these don't matter, and you would be forgiven to do so because a lot of games, it's very in vogue these days to put that into a game. Like, you can pet the dog. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh my God, you can pet the dog.
It's a meme. It's a meme.
Yeah.
Oh, this is why such and such game deserves Game of the Year. You can pet the dog. Yeah.
Yeah. We heard that with Hades constantly. It's like, okay. In this game, though, it doesn't really like affect the ending in a huge way, but depending on how often you pet Bullet and give him treats, he will either survive or die at the end. And the scene will change slightly depending on that. Not a lot, but like a little bit. I looked up guides on how to do this, and they're so vague. They say things like you can't let too much time pass between pets. You have to give him a treat every time he gives you an item. Well, that's not vague, but like the pets, you can't let too much time pass. What does that mean? Is that like 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that like one playthrough to the next?
Right, because my playthrough wasn't that long. So how much time are we talking about here? Yeah. The treat thing, I had the good ending for Bullet, and I didn't give him a treat every time he found something for me. Like, I was giving him treats intermittently throughout the game, but not like, oh, good, you found me a useless pack of cigarettes. Like, here you go, boy. It's like, find me something I could use, dog, and then you get a treat.
There are like different variations on this where like, we'll get into talking about the story here in a second, but like, there's one ending where Ellis dies and like Bullet can either stay with you or he can like leave. But I think those are both considered good endings.
Yeah, that's the good
I'm not really sure. And then there's a bad ending and Bullet can either like growl at you or run away scared. And I think those are considered like good or bad for Bullet. I'm not really clear on this. But all this to say, the way you treat Bullet will mildly influence the outcome of the game. It doesn't change, as far as I know, it doesn't change the actual ending, but like, what happens with Bullet will change very slightly. And that's kind of Bullet. Did I miss anything Bullet wise?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know it's a meme and I know it's overplayed, but petting the dog in video games is cool. I do want to make that point. Just a few games, some games, it's superfluous. I agree with you. I like that they made it matter somewhat in this game.
Yeah, I'm not taking it away from anybody. I don't like it, but if you like it, fine. Like, well, pet the dog.
I like when it matters. Like, it's not just like, hey, rub its head, and that's it. Like, another game that comes to mind is Marvel's Midnight Suns, and you earn like
the dog. Do you like that game?
Oh, come on. Come on, Rick. You know I like that game. And you could pet the dog in that, and it actually like gains. You start getting like cards you could use to use the dog in combat. So it's useful in that game as well.
Yeah, it is nice when it actually does something rather than just like get you an achievement.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Did I miss anything? Did we miss anything regarding just mechanics as a whole before we just talk about the story in sort of broad terms?
No, we talked about the flashlight as a mechanic, not necessarily in visuals, and I do just want to add the lighting is done really well in this game. You are in the dark using a flashlight a lot, and it aids to the immersion that whatever engine they use really nailed the lighting effects.
Oh, absolutely. And there are some sections where, you know, it'll be pitch black with the exception of your flashlight. There will be some where there's like some light coming through, maybe from the stars or something. And there will be some where you have like overhead lamps, like around the mining sites or the steam donkeys and stuff. And all of that changes the atmosphere. It's really, really cool. And if you're playing through to get one of the like secret endings or the good ending or whatever, where you're using the camera instead of the flashlight, it makes it even spookier because that thing does not put out a ton of light. You're relying on the night vision on the little LCD screen from like 2005. It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we're not going to go through beat by beat for this one, but let's talk about the story of the Blair Witch game in a sort of broad overview. So like we said at the top, this starts off with Ellis and his police crew going out into the woods to search for this missing boy, Peter. He's only 9, so we've got to find him. Ellis is the only one that's actively searching at first. Or no, that's not right. Everybody else is searching, but Ellis isn't with them.
Right.
You're kind of off on your own.
Yeah, showed up a little late, and there was a walkie-talkie left for someone else, like a deputy. And you're like, too bad, deputy, and take the walkie-talkie. I like that.
And your team, this is where it's first hinted at that, you know, Ellis has a troubled past. Your team is like, look, man, you don't got to prove anything. Like, I know why you want to do this, like with Jess and everything, but like, you really don't have to join us here. Like, you don't have to be a hero. And Ellis is like, well, no, like I'm going to help. And then eventually Bullet does pick up his scent because we find some items that belong to the boy. Bullet's on his trail, and Ellis is like, look, I've got this kid. Like, we're on his trail. We're doing this. Everybody else says you shouldn't go, but eventually they're like, well, all right, fine.
I kind of want to add, there's some things here that make it seem like this was all to get Ellis in the woods. Like the witch even manipulated that to get Ellis out there, because the kid who's missing is the little brother of another boy that Ellis shot during like what he thought was a robbery at a convenience store.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to poo-poo the idea of the witch manipulating things constantly because there are things like in the game where it does make sense. And like, it's like what you just said, that makes sense. And that's, you know, given the whole ending cycle, I can see that being a good justification.
Well, it could also be coincidence. You're not wrong. Like it could.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
But you're in the woods searching for this boy. Obviously, the witch has other plans for you, and that becomes an issue. Like we said, there is PTSD that you're dealing with, as well as the witch manipulating the environment. I love that. I know we talked about this already, but I really love the way those two interplay. I think it's really good. Mm-hmm. Really, really good. Throughout the opening, you're going to be doing a lot of searching. You're going to be doing some mild puzzling with the camera. About halfway through is that steam donkey section that just takes too much time, I think.
There's so much they throw at you, too, in this section of the game where you're coming across the same areas at different like points. Things look like they're brand new, like a campsite was just set up, and then the next time you run across it, it looks like it's been there for a month. And then like the truck is another good example, right? It's like the sheriff's truck, and then the next time you come across, well, the first time you see it, I think it's actually like torn up and in disarray and looks like it's been sitting there for decades, and then you come across it again and it's brand new. It's all very disorienting, and really, really well done.
Disorienting is a really good word. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We've mentioned some things so far, like about the 9-year-old boy's brother, about Peter, about Ellis's relationship with his ex-wife. All of this is told through either flashbacks that we get pieces of flashbacks where we can put this information together, and we also can pick it up through conversations that Ellis has either on the phone or on the walkie-talkie with Jess and with the sheriff, respectively. So that's where we pick all of this up. The relationship stuff, like with Jess and how Ellis got the dog, Bullet, that is done through flashback. But some more of the personal things you learn just by talking with the sheriff or with Jess. So that's sort of how this story is put together. There's no, like we've said before, I think like you said earlier, Ryan, there's no cutscenes like with characters talking to each other. There's no like info dumps. There's nothing like that. Because the story ultimately, like the story matters, but it's not in the front seat here.
Yeah.
It's helping drive the bus, but it's not the focus at all. The focus is the witch and, the spooks, the scares. Time manipulation. That's another note that I have under story. We kind of talked about this quite a bit already, but that is a big part of this, and it gets even more prevalent when we get towards the end of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're already here. Let's sort of talk about where this game ends up. So it kind of doesn't begin and end with just an evil witch in the woods. In a way it does, but there's more to it than that, because the person that kidnapped Peter and the person that killed your sheriff friend, the person that killed Todd, the logger that was lost, it's you?
Kind of. It's Carver at first. And yeah, I mean, it's you, right?
It's straight up BioShock Infinite, right? Like when, spoilers for BioShock Infinite, but like when you turn to Comstock, it's like, right. It's the same thing. This is you, kinda. So there's this cycle that is being perpetrated, and depending on what ending you get, the cycle is explicitly mentioned. Like it'll say the cycle continues or Ellis broke the cycle. So I think even though, like, yes, his name is Carver, but I mean, it's you. It's you.
They even do a point where you see your reflection in a puddle and you look like Carver.
So that was my next question. Is that the ending that you got?
That is the ending I got. I think that's the ending most people will get in their first playthrough.
Yeah, that's the ending that I got too. That is actually the bad ending, right. Believe it or not. So in this ending, to get these endings, to get the bad ending, you don't really have to do anything special at all. What ends up happening is at the very end, you find Carver. He is the one that, kidnapped Peter. He's doing all of this to a point. And what happens at the very end is Ellis is kind of driven mad, and you kill Carver, and the witch speaks to you directly, and she says, like, take his face, you've earned it. Mm-hmm. And you look into this puddle, and you see your reflection, and you are now Carver. Mm-hmm. And that is the end. You get, every ending is accompanied by a little, text screen, and it'll say, Ellis successfully killed and became Carver, so the cycle continues. So this implies that now Ellis is going to be doing the same things, kidnapping children to bring them to the witch, to keep this cycle going forever. Mm-hmm. In that ending, the bodies of Todd and Sheriff Lanning are never found. Jess completely just cuts you out of her life, like she never even mentions you again to anybody. Peter, the child, dies. And then you get that take his face line, which is honestly really cool. I really like that a lot.
Yeah. So I do want to kind of talk about the moments leading up to this too, in the house.
Yeah, sure.
Like, how do you feel about the house section when you actually get to the Blair Witch's abode? Like, how did that sit with you? That part of the game.
What do you mean? How did it sit with me?
Well, I really like what they were doing. It's again, you're in a maze, right? It's a labyrinth. You really can't find your way because it's the rooms move and are different, and different doors are open, some are closed. It just dragged on a little too long for me. This was another one that was 45 minutes to an hour of being in the house, and there were some really cool ideas in there, but it just never stopped happening.
Yeah, I think at that point I knew the game was ending and I was already along for the ride at that point. So like to be perfectly honest, I wasn't really thinking throughout a lot of that. Right. I was just, doing. In retrospect, yeah, it kind of did drag on a little bit too long.
Yeah. Did you listen to the witch? Did you do the things that she was telling you to do in the house? Because I think that affects the ending, right? When you're kind of doing the timey-wimey stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you committed those acts, right? The people hiding in the corners and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is really cool. That is really cool to see play out.
Yeah, it is very cool. And then the fact that you're like kind of transported back to the sawmill, right? And I didn't even take it as a choice at the time I was playing. It's like, she's like, do it, like, kill him. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like, it's what I'm supposed to do, right? Like, that's what's supposed to happen next. Like, okay, I'll kill him. I was very easily influenced by the witch in that whole ending.
And everybody will be. Like, unless you play this with a guide, you're not going to get the good ending the first time through. And I mean, this might even be like, I don't know if this is true or not, but this might be like an Undertale thing where you can't get the good ending the first time. I don't actually know.
I don't know
if that's true. Yeah. But there's just no way anybody would get the good ending on their first try without knowing about it first, I think. That good ending, by the way, you do have to do a lot of things to get to it. I'm pretty sure you cannot kill any of the monsters. You have to use the camera to just scare them away. There's a very minor note that you can find somewhere that will tell you that these creatures are scared of the camera.
Oh, interesting.
I don't even think I found it, to be honest. Or if I did, I just don't remember it. When I was just looking up info about the endings, that's something that I found. There are some other things that you have to do too, like finding collectibles and items and such. But if you fulfill all of these, then the good ending, it plays out the exact same for the most part up until you confront Carver. And instead of you killing him, he kills you. You kind of have a moment where you're like, no, like, I'm not listening to her. I'm not listening to the witch. And he's like, but she wills it. And you're like, well, no. And then he ends up killing you. And I think what I wrote here is, in a BioShock Infinite-esque turn of events, the circle has been broken. Yeah. And you can see Carver sort of fade out of existence. Or I can't remember, because you've been stabbed, so you're kind of doing the slow blinking thing.
Right.
I can't remember if Carver fades or if like you blink and he's just gone.
Oh, but, I don't know. I only read it, and I thought it was ironic that the good ending is you die.
It's kind of ironic, but like when you take a step back, what else could happen? There's no way you're getting out of this alive.
Oh, no.
Really.
It 100% fits, and it makes sense that this is the good ending, especially in contrast to the other one.
Oh, I would have screamed if the good ending was like, you take care of the bad guy and you kill the witch and you find the young boy and you get out of there, you get your wife back. And I would have screamed.
Exactly. You and Jess remarry and Bullet's the best man.
Yeah. He's wearing a tuxedo and everything. It's amazing. Oh, geez. Yeah,
you take the swamp donkey home.
But yeah, the good ending, you do die. The cool thing about the good ending, though, is that other things, actually, before I get to that, there is, depending on how you treat Bullet, in the good ending, like as you're laying there dying, Bullet might like come up to you and lay down. Mm-hmm. That really tugged at my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like that episode of Futurama with Fry's dog, Seymour.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
You don't know that?
No, I don't know that.
Oh, man. Like top 5 adult cartoon shows to cry to, for sure. Oh, wow. That episode.
I might have to watch really it now. I mean, we've talked about it before. I'm a big fan of recreational sadness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Me too, buddy. I'm with you. But yeah, that's a really sad note. I mean, if you treated Bullet badly, like as you're dying, he'll like leave. He'll just like snarl and walk away. But if you've treated him nicely, he kind of comes up to you and he like lays down, puts his head down, and then the screen fades. It's very sad. What's not sad, though, is in the good ending, Jess actually leads the search to find you, and then the other bodies are found as well. And Peter, the 9-year-old boy, he's in shock, but he lives. He's okay. So that's good.
That's a good ending. Yeah.
And there are, so these are called secret endings, and I looked them up. They don't seem like endings to me. But did you look into these at all?
I saw one is going back to the bunker and unlocking and putting like the battery, and you get the radio broadcast about what happened to Peter. I saw that was one of them.
I think is that not both of them?
Because
it could be you can. So when you get the good or the bad ending, you will, in addition to the text screen at the end telling you what happens, you will also get a radio broadcast that will say, the body of Peter was found. He was died.
He was died.
It's been a long week, man.
Peter
We're recording this Friday at 8:40 p.m.
Hey, I am not making fun of you. I'm laughing with you.
Yeah. Peter has become death, and he had become death via stab. Like, he was stabbed to death, and the radio broadcast will tell you that. Or if he's alive, they'll tell you that Peter's in shock, but he's okay. The secret ending to do this is weird. You have to play through the game once, and you have to collect everything. When you do, there's no new game plus in this, so when you do a new ending, nothing like carries over, except at the very end when you're in the house, the Blair Witch house, you can find a battery. And if you find that battery, you can restart the game at chapter 4, I think it is, where you find the bunker. And you can go into the bunker. If you restart the game in that way, the battery comes with you. Because video games. That's really the only explanation there is. So you collect the battery at the end of the game. You restart at chapter 4. The battery comes with you. And you can use that battery to listen to the radio broadcast. So you're at the very beginning of the game, and you can hear that Peter is either alive or dead.
It's cool that it mirrors the ending you got. I think that's neat.
That is neat. Since I didn't actually get these, I don't know if the game just ends here or what. Because, I looked these up on YouTube because I couldn't get them myself. And, it's a YouTube video.
Right.
It shows you the ending, and then it just fades to black. I don't know if that's the actual end.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Play through the rest of it again or something.
Because if you find that bunker in chapter 4, the sheriff is still alive. So if you find that bunker and you hear the radio broadcast that Peter is dead, I would assume you just phone the sheriff and let him know.
Yeah, and be like, "Hey, dude, bad news."
Yeah, time to pull out. So I don't know. Does it end there? I'm not sure, but I'm not sold on that. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on that one. I think that's a YouTubeable ending for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you want to go through and get the good ending, I think it's worth it. If you really like this game enough to do that, I think it's good. The secret ending, maybe not, but the good ending, yeah, why not? I don't think it's asking you to do anything that's too egregious.
Fair enough. It's not a long game. I think that's why it sat so high with me. I can overlook a lot of negative things about any game. I tend to focus on what the game does right. And for spooky games, for me, this really nailed that just feeling of unease and creepiness and tension the whole way through. And it's a short enough game that I would play through it again in a heartbeat. It's not a big ask. It's not asking for a month of your time to play it, and I think the game really benefited from that. Yeah.
Somebody said recently, I don't remember where I heard this, but they said the sweet spot for horror is under 10 hours. I firmly agree.
I think that's a sweet spot for any game at this point in my life. Anything that's under 10 hours, I'm totally on board with.
So I take it you're not going to play the new Persona game?
Absolutely not. I told you I started Ni no Kuni, and I got about 15 hours in, and I'm like, this is a bit long.
That game is too long in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it, but it's far too long. Yeah, this game's only got two quote unquote endings, because the secret endings are kind of derivations of the other two. So you've got two endings. You can get both of them, probably under 10 hours, assuming your first playthrough takes longer, right?
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't even be going for the other ending though. That's the thing. Like, to me, the ending, it was fine. It wasn't the best thing about the game though. And like, that's not why I play a game like this necessarily, you know? I play it for the feeling it gives me as I'm playing it.
That's fair. If you're an achievement hunter, you might be, well, I got to get the good ending because I've got the bad ending.
Right.
But I'm with you. The strength of the game is not in its narrative. Like, I love narrative, but like the ending of this game is ultimately kind of immaterial because everything the game does throughout it is fairly strong. I mean, there are some missteps IMO, but I mean, otherwise it's a fairly strong game. Oh, speaking of missteps, I do have one other thing that I think is a grave sin in this game. You can't save. You can't just save. There are predetermined autosave points in this game.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That is the only way you can save.
That's pretty bad.
I don't want that ever again in a video game.
I agree.
I don't want that ever again. This came out in 2019, right? I mean,
it's almost inexcusable. Yeah, it's almost inexcusable. There's one more thing that didn't sit well with me during this game, and it's
oh, sure.
It is true in a way, but there's a point where you're on the walkie and you've encountered Carver at this point, and you're like, you're going insane, so you start to like question whether or not you are Carver, and Carver says something to you like, "Oh, don't be silly, like you're not me and I'm not you," or something like that. And it's like, I don't like that the game says that and then has the ending that it has. Like,
it feels a little heavy-handed.
It's a little, yeah, it's kind of BS. Like,
it almost feels like they're saying it and then winking at you, the player, directly.
Right. Like, why put that in there at all? I think, and it's so funny that like that one line for me, just it was enough to like bother me.
Now, do you think it would have been better if Ellis would have said that, like wondered aloud whether he is a Carver or not, and Carver just didn't respond?
I just think you don't have to put it in there. Like, at that time, as the player, I'm thinking it anyway, and I'm thinking of all possible outcomes, and that's definitely one. And I don't think it had to be dialogue in the game at all. I think you're better up left to your imagination at that point.
That's fair. Yeah, I now that you mention it, I didn't notice it at the time, but you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I could have seen leaving the wondering from Ellis in there and then just having Carver either completely ignore it and go off and talk about something else,
right?
Or say something else. I mean, you're not having conversations like shooting the shit, but like, yeah, to have him like directly respond to it, that's a bit. It's a little too wink. Like, if you're genre savvy, like you just said that you were, where this is going probably, or at the very least, that's a possibility. So, yeah, that is a little heavy-handed. I didn't notice that before.
Thanks.
You're welcome. That's why you're here. Yeah, I guess those last 2 points are kind of the final criticisms that I have of the game. I think we got everything else out. I'm surprised to hear that the scores were so low, like trending towards 5 out of 10, especially given the gaming industry's penchant of, wanting to give everything a 7 out of 10.
Right.
So I was surprised to see so many lower scores. I wonder if it's not because of those bugs that were very present on release based on the forums. Yeah,
very well could have been. I mean, probably no surprise to you that I gave it the score I did, because I love video games, and I very rarely play one I don't like.
I mean, I'm with you, man. I don't think this is as bad as review scores lead it on to be. I think this is a good game. I think your tastes, I mean, I don't think it's perfect, right? I have a lot of things that kind of gave me friction, but this is a good game. Like, this is a spooky game. And, it does horror in a different way than Resident Evil 7 does. I just bring that up again because I'm playing it currently.
And it's first person. It's a just comparison, I think.
Yeah, that too. I think this is an easy recommend to anybody that likes horror video games. I think this is an easy recommend to anybody that liked the movie. I don't think you'll like it as much as the movie, but I mean, I think it's an easy recommend anyway. I wouldn't recommend it to people that don't like horror games, but that's really like, I can't think of any other qualified like do not plays that I would give for this. I guess if you don't like walking simulators, maybe don't play this because it's pretty light on the mechanics.
It's definitely mechanically light, yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, it's so short. Give it a play. Oh, I mean, one other thing to consider is price. This is typically $30 on Steam.
Oh, really?
That's a bit high. That's on the higher end that I would personally pay for it. I don't remember what I paid on PlayStation.
I think I got it for $9.99 during a PS sale, and like $10 to $15 is good. Like
that's perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. I think I probably got it at the same sale, or at least at the same price. But yeah, for $10, definitely an under 10-hour experience. It's an easy recommend. I mean, it does enough stuff really good, really well that, you know, it's $10, man. Like, give it a try. Yeah. You'll know if it's not for you within 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say probably give it 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, at the very least, get out of the first area, like get into Nightfall for the first time. Mm-hmm. And if you're still not into it, then okay, fair enough. You gave it a fair shake. Ryan, that's Blair Witch.
That's Blair Witch.
Top 5 Blair Witch episodes. And hey, speaking of that, we've got somebody here who at one time loved lists. There's a little less list content now, but I want to give Ryan a chance to talk all about his podcast, List Off, now that we've got to the end of the Blair Witch game. List Off is a great show. Ryan, if you wouldn't mind talking about it a little bit, I would love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about what your show is. And if you could, give a recommendation for a first-time listener. What episode should they start with?
Wow.
So floor is yours, buddy.
So yeah, as Rick mentioned, we used to like lists over at List Off. We have a healthy backlog of, you know, top 5, top 10 lists revolving around different video game topics, soundtracks, things like that.
A very healthy backlog. There's so much there.
Yeah, we've been doing it for more than 3 years now, I think. It's hard for me to remember how long it's been, but now we just kind of keep up with current news in the gaming industry and talk about that week to week and really whatever we feel like that about video games. We also have recently been doing a monthly series of a console draft where we pick a console and Brian and I will go back and forth each drafting a game and kind of assemble our teams, and then we leave it open to a vote to see who has the better team. And I also have a monthly video series on YouTube titled Wee-Haw, where I kind of have been documenting my adventures building a collection for the Nintendo Wii. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing all these things and making all this content, and I hope you give it a shot and enjoy ingesting it at some point.
Absolutely. It's a really cool series, that Wee-Haw. And it's a really good show. I mean, whether you're into the older style with the lists, which I think are really good, or the newer style, which is more like a gaming news focused. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's the only gaming news podcast that I listen to. Maybe.
Nice.
Maybe. Do you have a recommendation for first-time listeners to the show?
I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't recommend the episode that you're on, Rick.
That's true. That's true.
And gosh, now you're putting me on the spot, but I think it was what we want video games to do in the future or something like that. Isn't it something like that?
It was games we wish we could play for the first time all over
That's
again.
What it was. That's right. You see, look at who has a memory here. Rick does. I feel like I'm the worst friend ever, Rick.
I remember that because I came up with the topic and I remember thinking that title needs some work. Because that's not like it.
But like, how else would you word it? Title. You know, how else would you word it?
Exactly.
I knew it had something to do with time, and I always remember we did the Star Wars episode on your show.
That's true. That was a really fun episode.
It was.
I guess it is kind of tough, like doing a contemporary news show to recommend listeners go back to older news episodes. You know?
Yeah, I will say the console drafts we've been doing lately are a lot of fun. But yeah, I can't, you know, that's the problem with doing it. Like, how do I recommend, hey, go listen to us talk about the news from a month ago?
That's true. That is a little tough. I guess I didn't think about that before I asked the question. That being said, though, the draft episodes are very cool. You share your drafts in your Discord as well. You share both of the lists, and we could comment on it, say who we thought had the better list. You did one of the NES most recently. No, excuse me. Sega Genesis was most recently, as of 8 days ago at the time of recording, and which is something I definitely just remembered and didn't look at my phone for.
Wow.
As far as your thank you. As far as your Discord goes, though, it's pretty active. It's got a Marvel Snap channel that I haven't checked in quite a while because I don't play it anymore. But it used to be incredibly active.
It's pretty active. I mean, I got back into it myself. It's pretty.
Active. Nice, yeah. Cool. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. I might. Maybe I will. Okay, I will.
Do it.
Damn it, Ryan! You twisted my arm. I'm back. I'm back in the saddle.
Yes.
Got my destroy deck. Yeah. Weehaw. Yeah, so check out Listoff. I will have a link in the show notes to find all of their stuff. I don't remember. You have a list tree, right?
Yeah, Linktree. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Linktree, yes. List tree. Yes, it is a Listoff link tree. You will find that in the show notes. That'll get you to their socials. That'll get you to their podcast, most importantly, and their Discord. And you can check out all of that as well. Their Patreon, too. So check all of that out. Listoff is a really great show. I have been a fan since I've discovered Listoff, which was very early in my podcasting journey. And I've just been listening ever since. It is a quality show.
Thanks, man.
And also shout out to your co-host, Brian.
Man, fuck that guy.
I never expect to hear you swear. It's always a delight when you do.
I use it. I use it sparingly. It has more meaning. No, I'm kidding, yeah, Brian. I love you.
It has more oomph.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian. The chemistry between you two is really fantastic, and it's a large part of what makes Listoff such a great show. Not the only part, but a large part. And Brian is great. So make sure you check out Listoff. Check out the show notes. In the show notes, you will also find links to Pixel Project Radio stuff. You can find our socials. Currently, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. We have Threads, but I got to be honest, I don't like using Threads, so I don't bother. But Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, that's where we primarily are. We also have a Discord. I really love the Discord. I take a lot of pride in setting my Discord up, and I wish it were more active. Really wish it were more active, but it is a good time. It is filled with nothing but good people. You can do anything from talk very seriously about games and life to just shooting the breeze, or
Shaq post.
Yes, we have a memes and Shaq posting channel. That's always fun. And I made a politics channel for some reason. That's hooray. What else needs to be said? I have a secret desire to make the politics channel like, I want a running inside joke where the politics channel is also like, it doubles as a, I don't know, like a food channel or something. And it's not mentioned anywhere. Nobody mentions it. And if people ask, like nobody says anything, you just have to kind of get privy to the joke. I think that would be really fun.
That would be funny.
But I can't just make people do it.
I could kick it off.
Yes. There's a lot to do there. So it's free. We don't hide that behind the Patreon. So come and join that if you want. Speaking of the Patreon, we've got one of those too. You can check that out at www.patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. We've got some tiers. You get some bonus content for your contributions. Everybody is winning in that situation. No new review this week. If you wanted to review the show, please check out Spotify. Well, Spotify, you can rate the show. But Apple Podcasts and Podcast Addict, that is where we check for ratings and reviews, and I read every single one on air. So please do that. It helps the show get discovered as well, and it's a good indicator of whether or not I can keep doing what I'm doing, or if I should really consider, reworking some stuff. I take feedback very seriously. So by all means, if you have anything to say, check those out. Once again, I got to thank Ryan from Listoff Podcast for joining me.
I got to thank you, Rick. I got to thank you for having me on.
All right. Top 10 times we have got into a no thank you conversation because it happens every time. And rightfully so. But it's always a blast talking to you, man. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're a part of the community. Listeners, check out Listoff. Check out our socials as well. And that about wraps it up. I think we've drawn out this Midwestern goodbye long enough, don't you?
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, you stay cool until I don't know why I said that. I'm Rick Firestone, your host, as always. Until next time, we'll catch you later. Take care.